Howdy everyone, it's the worst content creator you know, Waifu Belector, and today I'm gonna talk about Evil West. What's good about it, what's bad about it, and what's just an indifferent fact. So let's not waste time and just dive right in. Now, Evil West is a game developed by Flying Wild Hog, the same people responsible for the Shadow Warrior games, a series that I have very little knowledge about. So I pretty much had nothing to go on ahead of diving into Evil West, aside from the assumptions I could create myself after watching gameplay trailers and whatnot. And from a very brief look at Evil West, it's clear that they're trying to do something. It's trying to restore a feeling. It comes off as a very obvious attempt at a throwback. Just from looking at the game in motion, I get big Red Dead Revolver energy and whatever that old Oddworld game was called, Stranger's Wrath, I think. Sorry if that's wrong, but what the fuck ever. Evil West gives off that kind of vibe, and it seems to be doing it on purpose. That's what I thought before I played Evil West. Now that I have played Evil West, they definitely did it on purpose. This game actually does a good job of accomplishing its throwback vibe without coming off as disgustingly unoriginal or irritatingly loyal to a bygone and frankly inferior era. Put more simply, I mean that it feels like you're playing an old original Xbox game, except for where you don't want it to feel like that. It's a fine line that gets walked pretty well. And like I was getting at, gameplay wise, this isn't just some unoriginal old school copycat. It's not just a Red Dead Revolver clone or a Stranger's Wrath clone. Evil West isn't really trying to copy any one game beat for beat, or even amalgamate a couple of them for that matter. What Flying Wild Hog is trying to do with Evil West really is an attempt at restoring a feeling. They are trying to copy a vibe from yesteryear rather than explicitly copy the things that caused that vibe. And I think they achieved that. Evil West definitely feels weirdly nostalgic for a game I had absolutely never played before. Now, with all that marked off, let's try to get into the thick of the actual gameplay here. How does this game work? What are we dealing with? And I'll start off on the lower end of things here and talk about the level design. So the levels aren't really anything to write home about. They're basically linear walkways with like 6 arena encounters that happen every certain amount of steps. So pretty much walk, 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 fight, walk, 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 fight, walk, 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 fight, sprinkle in some cutscenes and you beat the level. Very straightforward and quite unimaginative. Now, I'll give them a lowercase e for effort here because they do attempt to try to spice up the straightforward approach, but that's usually by adding quote-unquote puzzles that are so simple that they are puzzles in name only, or there will be short optional paths peppered in each level that basically amount to you walking about 5 feet unimpeded in the opposite direction of the intended direction and getting a little bit of money for it. Oh, and how could I forget the minecart sections where you ride in a high-speed minecart for about 1 minute and just shoot a couple of stagnant targets until it's over. So it's nothing, and look, like I said, I appreciate the effort because these are all just attempts to try to fancy up level design that the devs clearly knew was a bit repetitive, especially the minecart sections. I mean, it only happens like twice, and both times it's short as hell. So it just seems like they kind of realized that their level design was a little repetitive too late and just kind of shoehorned in a couple of things to try to spice it up. So yeah, the sort of level layout or format just is what it is, and honestly, it lends itself to the nostalgic feel of the game, if nothing else. But an aspect about the gameplay more positive than the levels, but still not the coup de grace of Evil West, are the enemies. Listen, this is far from the greatest assortment of enemies I've seen in a game, but there's a lot to like here, including the absolute dislike you'll have for some enemies, because it's good to have a few asshole enemies that you have to manage or prioritize mid fight. It's a great way to keep shit spicy. And this game definitely has a few enemies that I'd see and just be like, oh, for fucking God's sake, another one of these assholes. And you go from struggling against those kind of enemies to dominating them along with entire rooms of other enemies. It's a very Doom-like approach to a game that is very unlike Doom in most areas. Well, unlike Doom Eternal, it actually has more stuff in common with Doom 2016. But anyway, admittedly, the enemies in Evil West aren't designed all that well. Aesthetically, they come off mostly very generic, but the necessary utility for exciting battles is still baked into those generic villains. There's also a fair amount of challenge in this game. It's not Elden Ring or anything, but there are odds to be overcome, and aside from one boss that I thought was doing a lot of cheap shit, it all seemed like a fair enough and fun challenge. There are a couple of really fun, tough late game bosses that I just thought were pretty well crafted, and even in a late encounter where I was getting killed multiple times, the challenge of overcoming it felt more fun than frustrating, possibly because it never felt wholly insurmountable. But yeah, while all that's cool and all, the real star of this game is the combat you're directly in control of. It does start off fairly standard, but through a series of progression unlocks and optional perks, Evil West's combat becomes very, very fun. It's mostly because they just give you so much to play with and special weapon cooldowns to manage and all that sort of thing. Having all or even most of the tools makes the combat reach a point where it's really fucking fun. But once you get in the flow of utilizing everything and reacting to certain kinds of enemies, shit gets amazing at times. Unfortunately, some of the controls for the way you execute certain abilities or combos can be a bit cumbersome or quite finicky, but it doesn't hurt the combat so much that it can't be enjoyed or anything. I mean, they give you a rifle, a 6-shooter, a flamethrower, a shotgun, a minigun, dynamite, and my least favorite weapon, a crossbow. Mix all that with electricity-fueled melee abilities, combos, and a parry, and the combat can just get absolutely nuts. To say nothing of the perks and upgrades that make it even crazier. So you take the good of the combat with the mid-tier enemy stuff with the less than good level design, mash it all up with a well-executed throwback feel, and I'd say you come out with an overall good but not great product that manages not to trip over its own feet too much during its 7-hour runtime. If I had to put a number on it, I'm thinking it's a solid 7. Definitely worth a play, even if it's not very modestly priced. But anyway, there you have it. My thoughts on Evil West. Tell me what you think if you've played it, or feel free to just tell me how wrong everything I said is and how bad the video is. You know, all comments allowed. But until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and the main character's last name is pronounced inconsistently all game. Goodbye.